Thank you for joining today. Um, I can't wait to dive into this event. We're going to talk all about evolving your brand's DEI and ethics messaging. I'm really excited to share just a little bit of background on our esteemed expert today, Nichole Pitts. So, drawing from her experience as VP of Compliance and Ethics for a global engineering firm, Nichole is now the founder and CEO of Integrity, empowering professionals and organizations to create a healthy, diverse culture that drives business and helps people thrive. We're so excited to learn from you today, Nichole. We also know how valuable your time is, and we're just really grateful to you for investing in Dreamers and Doers in this way. With that, I will go ahead and hand it over to you.
Thank you so much, Nicole. I appreciate it. I'm excited to be here to talk about embedding DEI and ethics into your brand identity. Just a housekeeping note. So if you need to show the captions. I know that captions are enabled, so you can just go down to play subtitle at the bottom of the Zoom screen if you need that. As Nicole said, I am Nichole as well, and I am the former vice president of compliance and ethics for a global company. I'm also a lawyer by trade, and I have had Integrity for 6 years next month. So, yay, I'm so excited. One of the things that I've learned as being an expat, I've lived in Paris and in London, and I actually have my first legal entity. I started my business in London. So I have Eth Integrity London and then Eth Integrity here in the States. And that's where I learned a lot just about when I was in the global role of dealing with diversity, equity, and inclusion, along with compliance and ethics, and trying to really engage and connect to my workforce. And how do I end up really getting them to understand what we're doing, talking to different ministries and government officials, as well, due to some illegal activity that the company had had before I come on. So using those learnings and starting my own company. So that's been cool. But one of the things is with DEI and ethics, it's a constant learning process that's ever changing. And we try to make sure that the missteps that we make and we bump into each other and everything, that's okay. As long as we're failing forward, it's okay to make mistakes. And I think sometimes people don't appreciate that. And I like to use the analogy of when you go to the optometrist and you might just be going for your regular appointment. And then they'll say, oh, you need glasses, or maybe you need to increase your prescription. And when you get them, don't even realize how blurry things were until you've gotten your new prescription. And so my hope is that with this webinar, that I give you the tools and information that you'll need today to help increase your business processes through a DEI and ethics lens. So hopefully these proactive measures will help you embed them into your brand identity. So how do you get your business to stand out from others? And how do you incentivize people to spend their currency, not just their money, but also their time, attention, and their engagement on your products or your services? That's when you get into branding, where you're being very intentional in order to be effective in connecting your business with your ideal client. So, Stephanie, I'd like to know exactly if you'd like to share what you do.
Yes, sorry, sort of eating lunch, multitasking here.
That's okay. Sorry.
So so my company provides CFO and bookkeeping services to nonprofits.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay, so what I'll try to do is also work that into what I'm doing just to give you some examples that way. Um, I want to establish a foundation on DEI and ethics so that we all are starting from the same place and know where I'm coming from. One of those things I like to ask is, when you think of DEI and ethics, what do you think about? Like what does that mean to you?
You're asking me. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think of creating a workplace and creating an environment where a diverse group of people feel feel welcomed and feel included. And then also serving, having a business where the clients that we serve also feel like we understand who they are, we represent who they are, and they feel included as a client as well.
Okay. And how large is your business? Are you a solopreneur? Do you have a small business where you have how many employees?
We have 15 employees,
Okay,
15 full-time employees and about 100 clients globally.
perfect. Okay, that helps me to make sure I target some things to that. So when we think about diversity, inclusion, equity, and belonging, it's like, what do all these letters mean, especially since they've currently been weaponized? Is it didn't earn it? Is what I've recently been hearing for DEI. So I want to be able to help people understand exactly what these letters mean because they come in so many different ways, like DNI, DIB, all these things. So with diversity, it really is defined broadly. A lot of people think of it as the big five of race, gender, sexuality, religion, and age. But there are also so many other things to keep in mind, such as mental health, people with disabilities, maybe you're deaf or visually impaired. There's also neurodiversity, maybe educational levels. And it could be that it's not you, but you could be a caregiver for people that have these different types of things. So it's so broad. And I think sometimes we lose focus of that. Looking at inclusion, inclusion is that set of actions that people take to make sure that we all get the same opportunities for access and success as everyone else. So whereas diversity is a fact, we all have these undeniable unique traits. Inclusion, I like to say, is more about fairness. So this is where it's a practice. Okay, so diversity is fact, inclusion is where we're proactively making sure that people are involved. And then with equity, that's where inclusion, it may be about having the access to the same opportunities. Equity is about leveling that playing field because we aren't all starting from the same starting line. And then you've got belonging, which is, while inclusion is necessary, because you need to be a part of the conversation, belonging is critical because that's what makes us feel like we're actually valued. Belonging is a human need and is genetically wired into all of us. So we want to feel like we belong. We want to feel that we are belonging in this unique way. So there's this saying that says, diversity is being invited to the party. Inclusion is about being asked to dance once you arrive. Equity is about being able to pick the DJ. And belonging is being able to dance however you want to. So it could be like the Peanuts character where it's like this, whatever is your thing, doing the two-step, but you can do it. You don't have to do a specific dance. So have you focused on DEI in your business strategy, DEI and ethics? Yes, no, it's relatively new, or you're just not sure where to start?
I would say yes and no. We've thought about it, maybe have not put as much focus on it as we should, but now are really like yes, we want to have a DEI strategy. We want to make this much more integrated into our overall business. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So I always say that with DEI, it really is just embedded. It should never be an add-on. It's just what you do. And I think a lot of times we don't realize that we're probably already doing a bit of that. We just need to be more proactive and aware of what we're doing. So when we think of ethics, that's the other part of it. So you've got DEI on one hand and ethics on the other. And ethics is really about that way of living. And it's specifically looking at the behaviors of individuals in society. So when we're trying to do our marketing, we're trying to market towards these different behaviors. The thing with ethics is that it's not the same. So your ethics, typically it was like, well, maybe somebody's ethics in a different country or culture would be different than the States. But if you're looking now, especially with the current political landscape, it's different state to state with certain things. So it's like, what do you define as ethics for your company? What is ethical? And there are some high level things that I'm like, this is just what common human decency is, but understanding who your target audience is. And when we look at that, especially with our branding and our marketing, we really have to be, we need to be knowledgeable about these 4 different types of discrimination that we may fall into, and which is also, I always say that you are conditioned. So the first one is structural. And this is a wide ranging system of favoritism across institutions and just society in general. It gives advantages to privileged people, which results in disadvantages to marginalized communities. So we think of like coving access, some cartoons, if you look over, or even look at TV series, something that you may have loved in the 90s and you rewatch it during the current lens, and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe it. You look at current, like Ukraine, and how that's happened. And then the toys that we've played with. I always say that I'm an 80s baby, 70s, 80s baby, and I'm surprised I'm still living, because there was just all the lead-based stuff, paint that we used to play on. And then you have institutional. And this occurs when you have an organization that involves unfair policies. So thinking through with what you have is like, you have the Crown Act that had come out a few years ago that says, we're not going to discriminate on how you wear your hair. Because it used to be back where you'd have these dress code policies, and there would be pictures of your hair should look like this and not this. It was very prescriptive. And this leads to really inequitable outcomes. Then you have the individual, which is your beliefs and attitudes. And this can be both unconscious and conscious that reinforce that oppression. And then finally, that interpersonal. So this could be maybe racist, misogynistic, homophobic interactions with others. So structural and institutional are that institutional oppression, that systemic oppression, and individual and interpersonal is how we internalize it, either the privilege or the oppression. So I say all this to say, when we're doing our marketing and everything, we look at how we're informed by TV, by our generations, that our ancestors and things like that. But also we've had all of these things that we've seen. And then maybe we continue to provide that imagery in our marketing that we do, or how we speak to people. And I'll give a lot of examples of that. But first, the B word was bias. It's always, oh, that's a naughty word. And you can't talk about DEI without talking about bias. And most of us understand that like prejudice and discrimination is wrong, but we still have biases. And if they're left unchecked, they can influence our workplace decisions and interaction. It also is, it's almost like therapy is how I look at this work, is that it forces us to address our own ways of thinking and how what we do and say affects others. And sometimes we have to unlearn ideas. There are over 200 named unconscious biases. We all have them. I say it's not a bad thing. It's important to know it, because you can be aware of it. I'm constantly having to check myself, and I do this work every day, but I will come up on something and I'm like, you know what? That's a bias. I really need to think about that. But that's a good thing that I've noticed that. And studies have shown in cognitive science that our brains receive about 11 million pieces of information every second. So what that means is that we're only able to process maybe 40 of those details consciously. And that means that maybe 99% of what we do is unconscious. And that means that we have a lack of awareness where we don't kind of realize just how biased we are. But with all of this information, we make snap judgments. And this can be where the human brain has to take shortcuts, because we just can't process that many things. So it may be where we're profiling. We unconsciously stereotype. So Did you know that it takes less than 30 seconds to linguistically profile a speaker and make quick decisions about their ethnic origin or maybe their socioeconomic status and background? So you'll hear things and it'll be like, oh, I can definitely tell you're from the South. Um, I lived just long enough in London to where I can tell the different accents. Because when I first moved there, I was like, it all sounds like the Beatles to me. But now I'm like, oh, okay, I can tell the posh accent, maybe the Cockney, the Geordie, and all of this. But understanding the subtle ways that bias plays into that society. And we have this lifetime of observations from media, personal experiences, and these social constructs that we form these generalizations, and we use them to be able to figure out how we're going to interact with them. But this bias can also make us susceptible to being taken advantage of. So we think about sociopaths, Ponzi schemes, fraud. I love Netflix, so I watched Inventing Anna and the Tinder Swindler, and you think about that was from those biases. It was like, I'm like, now Anna Delvey, we had social media at that time. Didn't nobody check? It's so easy to go online. I mean, people background check their boyfriends that they're dating. They're like, you can find Anna. And then with the Tinder Swindler, I'm like, well, who flies off with a man you just met at breakfast? But that's just me, but those are the things that we come across and we make those snap judgments. So that's where we get into our branding, and Jeff Bezos said that your brand is just what other people say about you when you're not in the room. And as you know, as a business owner, your brand is that's your currency, and what people are saying about you. Why do they make you their top choice? So when you do your branding, you're really trying to make this intentional experience to have them feel something that make you their top choice. So by embedding that DEI and ethics into your brand identity, you're going to be able to really secure a target market that is inclusive, and it also gives you a competitive advantage. And I always say that a good brand doesn't need to cost you millions of dollars. It just requires creativity and research. So I created this Rise Up method, which is 6 steps, and it just talks about how to help businesses ensure that their marketing and communication of their products and services are inclusive. And I want to be able to empower these businesses to identify who they and their businesses are, the demographics of their ideal client, and how to inclusively design their products and services so that they can make sure that they're servicing their clients appropriately. So when we think of the R, that is reevaluating your own identity. So what is your UDI? And your UDI is your unique diversity identity. That is, who are you? Who is your business? So for you, Stephanie, it's like, what are your unique traits? What are the unique traits of your employees? How does that make your business really stand out from others? How do you harness those unique traits to make you stand out and connect with other people that have those unique traits? Understanding who you are and the culture of your business. So what are your core values? Have you worked on those? What are your key brand words? Do they actually accurately reflect who you are? And if you've done those, do you keep up with those? Because it's a continuous improvement. That's one thing I've found, is that with my own diversity, it changes as you go on with life. That you might have temporary diversity categories that you fit into, but you also have experiences from from things that you've gone through. This also helps you to create connections. As you identify your own unique diversity traits, then we always try to find people that we could connect with that has some of those similar things. So using that to your own uniqueness to connect with them, and then that you've created that relationship. And also, as I said, consider your experience with this diverse trait. So it could be maybe if you're pregnant and you're going through that particular type of experience, then it's like, oh, I want to talk to people that are going through this journey. And then you use that going forward. Here's some lessons learned. And it might be that you see that there is a a piece missing in the process that you can service. And typically we create our businesses based on a need that we have that we feel isn't being met. And understanding your UDI allows you to connect with your ideal client in an authentic and relatable way, while also packing that emotional punch, because we are emotional people. And if you look at commercials and things like that, it's like the emotional punch is what gets you. Like, everybody knows the ASPCA commercial with Sarah McLachlan, and that as soon as the music comes on, I'm like, and I getting more, giving more. But it's that thing of that, it's got that emotional punch. And it's like, well, how? And even just with the song, what it's going to be. So we talk about, what our unique diversity is. And I talked about the big five. So it could be like, well, maybe I'm getting older. I've noticed that I am now an older American and my experiences are different. So I'm looking at the age piece. I didn't think of that before when I was in my 20s. I was like, footloose, face free. But now I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't run too fast because I'll hurt my hip. It could be also looking at gender and understanding what gender means. Maybe ethnicity, especially if you have different ethnicities that are a part of your family. I've seen a lot on social media where you do have blended families, and it may be transracial families through adoption, where it's really trying to understand what those identities are, and understanding maybe that there's some things that we could do to make this more inclusive. How do we show up in a better way? But you also have those the other types of diversity that I talked about. So maybe it could be medical. So you could have diabetes, maybe IBS, vitiligo, maybe cancer, something like that. Mental health. So some people are OCD, bipolar, introvert. Maybe they get anxiety in group settings, or they're on the spectrum. Thinking about people with disabilities, and this is one thing that I've learned from the disability advocates, is like, when you speak, is it identity first? Some of them like that. So it's all of this, how do you engage with them in the appropriate language? They could be deaf or visually impaired. Maybe they're mobility impaired. It could be they have learning disability like dyslexia, or intellectual disability. And I was doing a workshop, and I use Legos when I do a workshop, and I was talking about ethics. And as my own diversity, I'm currently dealing with hot flashes, so I've got my fan, sorry. But I was doing the Legos there was a deaf man there, and he also presented, and he had two people that were translating for him. And it was one of those things where I asked a lot of questions. Like, I really wanted to understand, because during I didn't really think about people that were deaf or sight impaired when I create things. So he helped me to understand that, and also understanding from the people that were translating, well, how did you get into this? And in one, it's the understanding, well, they had family members that were deaf, and that's how they got into that. But it's always really understanding that. Height and size. You think about the discussion that you have on Ozempic versus just losing weight naturally, but maybe some people can't. That is all you, and you also get discriminated against based on size. There's a lot of detail around that. Socioeconomic and classism, education, relationships, whether or not you're married or you're single. Maybe you're left-handed. That's also a diversity, because you think a lot of like scissors that may be for right-handed people, desks that are tailored towards right-handed people. So there's all these different things that come up, but thinking about what unique traits you and your business have, and how you can leverage that to connect to other people that have those unique traits. So when I talk about myself, I'm like, okay, I'm a woman, and I go by she, her, hers. I'm Black. I am an American. I'm an expat. I lived in Paris and London for almost 7 years. I'm Christian. I'm visually impaired. I have to have contacts and now readers because I'm getting old. I have performance anxiety. Historically, when I first started having to do webinars or just presenting, I had huge performance anxiety. So I did stand-up comedy in order to overcome that. But it was like, how do I do that? And currently I'm a business owner, but I'm currently the victim of perimenopause. It is killing me. So that's why I have my my fan from a hot flash. We just deal with it. So then I want to talk about the ideal client. So when we're thinking about who do you market to, and this is where we get specific. So for example, do you state that your ideal client are maybe women entrepreneurs? If so, are they cisgendered, or are you looking at including trans women or non-binary? Sometimes we say, oh, I am a coach and my target audience is just women. Well, who specifically? Maybe you have services that are targeted and you think, well, ideally this is for women, but as we've seen in society, so much is fluid now. Some market research with your client is going to be key, because that's how you figure out what it is that they need. Okay, what do they want? And using that in your marketing campaigns. It's like if you're using the language that I'm using to describe, and it's like, okay, here's what I've heard, and here's how my solution helps you. Include also socioeconomic resources as well. So you think through, I'm on social media a lot, and I'd seen this lady on there. She's not a celebrity, but she hangs with celebrities, and she's well-to-do, and her husband had to go off and be a presenter for one of I think the World Cup or something, and she was left with her 2 kids and a nanny. And those 55 days, she was just like, I am struggling. I don't know. I have to take care of these kids by myself. And it's looking at her target audience for this message are other people in a certain socioeconomic status. It wouldn't be for the person that struggles with this regardless. So it's those types of things. But by combining your understanding of your own UDI as well as your clients, that helps you come up with the right brand words that you need for your identity. And if done right, it creates that brand loyalty. So think about Beyonce and Taylor Swift. They have loyal fan bases. And it's like they've created their own brand to reach out to them. And with, how many people are looking at football now because of Taylor? And with Beyonce, I am a big Beyonce fan. I am Cowboy Carter down. You will see me in a cowboy hat and some boots this summer. But looking at the intentional experiences that she gives on an album, and it's that she hears these types of things, and she's like, okay, I'm creating a platform for other artists that are in this genre that don't have that experience, but also really creating awareness and thinking with what you're doing, how does that work for you? Another example is History Sisters. I don't know if you've ever heard of them, but I recently had to have hysterectomy. I had a serious medical issue, and I was like, okay, I don't want to do this. What do I have to do? Blah, blah, blah. And I came across History Sisters, and I'm like, first, the name is great. I love it. But they provide hysterectomy support for anyone that's going through that. So not just cisgendered women, but women that were assigned female at birth, because a lot of the reproductive diseases that you see affect you if you have those female reproductive organs. And what I loved about it is that they provide a community to really help you understand what's going to happen, but they also have their shop there. So they're telling you, here's how to prepare for the surgery. They have cohorts for your week. If you're having your surgery, other people that are having surgery that week, you're in a community. They really use that community well, but they have their shop. So you may need to get a belly binder and all these other things. Maybe if you're having a pillow, you need that pillow. So there's all these things and where they have plugged into the community. They hear these things and they've connected with them and continue to improve and expand that way. You also have Hatch. So for people that have insomnia, I love Hatch. I found out about them a few months ago. I love it. But if you have insomnia, it's a great sleep guide, but it's not only for adults, it's for children as well. they have expanded it as they've heard from different clients. I live far away from my parents, and my mother wants to be part of bedtime for my baby. You can now have your mom record bedtime stories that go in with the hatch. It has affirmations and all these different things. It's expanded beyond that white noise that we normally think about dream machines, but they reached into their community and they're like, okay, my unique trait is I can't sleep. Do you have the same thing? And what reasons are there? And then maybe it's the whole thing of how you even wake up, because it's a gentle sunrise with some birds chirping. I love it. I'm like, oh, I hadn't even thought about that. I'm gently coming awake versus my alarm on my phone that is like, get up. And I'll be like, no, 10 more minutes. Thinking through that feedback, that market research that you get from your clients. And then this also helps you to really design your services in an inclusive way. So inclusive design is an approach, mindset, or practice that ensures that everyone across the full range of human diversity, regardless of their identity or background, can fully access and benefit from your products or services. And for your example, Stephanie, it's like, okay, well, you're marketing your CFO services, accounting, bookkeeping services. So it's making sure that you're getting into all those pockets where people would need that. And it's thinking through maybe small businesses to large businesses and people that may not know that they need bookkeeping services, because they'll be like, well, you only need that when you're a large business. But solopreneurs need it so much more because they don't even know how to get started. So it's like, how do you ensure that you have connected with them and that your approach is where they feel like, oh, I see where this is important for me and that I need this. You look at Fenty Beauty. When this came out a few years ago, people were like, oh my God, I can't believe there's so many different colors to choose from. Thinking about even undertones. I didn't know anything about undertones, but you think how shocking that was in 2017. It's just normal today. Also, Elf on the Shelf. We recently had Christmas. And so many kids love Elf on the Shelf. I mean, and getting that elf to move to different places in the house, it's hard to remember. I'll be like, he just fell asleep. But looking at where does the elf represent your child or the child that's in your home? If they have a disability, it's good to be able to see that there are also different types of unique elves and things like that. Another example is Hermes. I know if you've been hearing about the Birkin bag antitrust lawsuit lately, being a lawyer by trade, I really get into this stuff, but it was interesting in that you've got the Birkin bag at this very high price, like $13,000 to get in. And then not everybody can get it, but it's part of the marketing is that, it's not made for everybody. It's quantity versus quality. And from an ethical point of view, are the bags appropriately priced? Because you think about luxury bags, typically there's like an Altier where they're doing a lot of this stuff by hand, which is saying, okay, this is the price for that. But it could be some unethical marketing where they mass produce this in China and sell it. So it's this whole type of thing of, as you're looking at your bags or your products, making sure that, like, especially the products, that you think about who your audience is, and know that if this is the price point, this is the price point. Okay, you don't undervalue your services, but you also want to be ethical and not charge. And I've seen this a lot, especially there was an expose about if you put a picture of a dress into Google image search, you can see that Shein will make that same dress for $20 and you might be paying $160 for someplace that's high end. So it's those types of things, and making sure that you're also just being equitable and how you're pricing products. And then getting to executing your marketing and your communications effectively. So it's how accessible are your marketing tools? Have you ensured that your website and emails are accessible? And I'm talking about making them internet accessible, where you're leveling the playing ground. There's about 20% of the world's population has an issue with being able to properly see and read the internet. And when we're looking at inclusivity, we're saying, well, do I have the right tools so that everybody can access what, not only my internet, what's on my website, but also the documents that I give them? Can they see it on a screen reader? Have I made it, if they need to be able to sign something, maybe it's the e-signatures, that type of thing. If they can't print it out, sign it, scan it, and put it back in. Also thinking about, if you serve clients globally, have you considered having your website translated to broaden your appeal? Thinking about products, do you have them in those different languages? When I lived in Paris, I was like, okay, I was learning French because I didn't know any French. And I'm like, what is this? And then I would only go to those websites where I could translate it into English, because I mean, I only had so much time for a dictionary to look it up, but understanding what the description was. So it's those types of things. Another great example of this is the 2021 Walmart commercial that they did for the holidays. The whole thing was showcasing all these different cultural holidays. And they never were mentioning Walmart products, but the whole thing was, it connected you to what this feeling of holidays is for you. And you can get those things at Walmart to create your dinners and to decorate. And I thought that was such a great way, it was such a great commercial. I like to use it in training, but it's no longer on YouTube, so I have to try to find it. But and the last thing is identifying the right partnerships and collaborations to be able to get more eyes on what you're doing. So on my website, I use Accessibility, and it's to the bottom of the right. And what that allows them to do is just look at web accessible content. It's ADA compliant. It allows them to figure out if they want to increase the text and all of that. If they need a screen reader for that. And when you post like pictures and things, you always have to have alternate text so it can explain what that is. When you do you post anything on LinkedIn or Instagram, and you may have a photo, it's always good to describe what's in that photo in your actual post that you have, because some people won't be able to see that. Also looking at your color contrast, making sure that it's legible. You stay away from pastel only color palettes. You need to have a dark color and a light color for people to really be able to see. And also think about your fonts. Dyslexic, things like that. It's very hard to read some of these beautiful fonts that'll be out there, because it's like, well, I don't even understand what that says. So the accessible fonts I have on the screen, then there's really sans serif or slab serif. So you want to make sure that you're using one of those, at least for your base content, so that people can see what you're talking about. With marketing, as I talked about before, looking at the fluidity of what you have, who your market could be. I use C&D shellac, and during their Cyber Monday sale, I saw that they had men with polish on, and I hadn't even thought about that, but I'm like, this is a great way to expand your market. Also, Jones Road. Bobbi Brown created her new makeup line, Jones Road, and it's the whole makeup simplified thing, but it's great in the fact that it is limited makeup. So if you have very dry skin and you don't want a complete beat face or anything like that, she has these products that are really about skincare, but the people that she partners with are all ages, and you typically don't see older women with older features that are on this, and they are absolutely gorgeous. It is nice to see what these products look like on faces that may look like yours. That also gets me to like Danessa Myricks, where she has a line, and looking at like vitiligo, or there's somebody that has an issue, like anything that you may have on your face, maybe you have acne and things like that, but putting those into your marketing so that they can see themselves and what they're doing. It could be that, you know, one of your core values is that you have different types of charities that you want to be able to support. How does your core values and your unique diversity identity really work together? So if we think about Ben and Jerry's, they love to make ice cream. They talk about that, but they love using their business to make the world a better place. And so you'll see that they have this limited edition product, but they also partnered with Tony Chocolonely, who is very focused on 100% exploitation free products. So his business is about disrupting that illegal child labor and forced labor on these cocoa farms in West Africa. So this is a really great partnership. And you think about who you would partner with in order to be able to create more diverse representation and highlight your core values in UDI. And as I talked about with fast fashion, you know, with Shein, it's that quantity, you know, but if you think about supporting smaller businesses, and if you are a smaller business that's in fashion, then you talk about how do you make those clothes sustainable? It's that mass production versus having maybe these collections, these limited collections, but it's how you go and market that this is why you're going to pay a higher price point, but this is how you contribute back to society, reduce that carbon footprint, you make things more sustainable. So you think about corporate sustainable responsibility, things like that. And then you have what I say is the P part or the U part, which is understanding that it's a process. You're going to make mistakes, but invest in your learning. Have a dialogue versus a monologue. And in learning, you can think about webinars, social media, books, magazines, there's so many things. And also look into your community. Ask for that feedback, solicit that feedback, but also act on it when you receive it, because that shows that your people feel like they're being seen and heard. So a good example of that is Nike. They had a 16-year-old boy named Matthew Waltzer, I believe. He had cerebral palsy, and he had wrote a letter to Nike in 2012 and said, hey, I love the shoes, but I have difficulty putting them on because of my disability. Could you make a sneaker that would fit my needs? And so they did. They developed this and everything. They put it out. But as you can see from the marketing that it went out at that time, it was only able-bodied people that were wearing these shoes. So the marketing didn't align with what the unique diverse trait was. Okay. So it's looking at, we've created this, but you're not marketing it appropriately. So people that could use this are not only those that have cerebral palsy, but maybe they're missing a limb. Maybe they're like a leg or hand. It could be you're pregnant and you can't bend over. There's so many things. You could be, there's so many different reasons why you would need this. So it's ensuring that while you've listened, you've maybe created a product or service, make sure that you're also marketing to that target demographic. And then Peloton is another one. So when we think about deposits, brand deposits, that pushes your program forward, while withdrawals can really harm your brand. So Peloton, I love Peloton. I have one during 2020. It was, everybody was like, I got to have Peloton during COVID because I got to get the weight off. So they had this slogan, together we go far, and they would create hashtags to create communities. They are a really great example of how to create a community for your brand. And then the CEO at that time also did fireside chats with each of these groups to figure out, how can I make sure that Peloton is serving your needs? What do you want from us? And then they implemented that series, and they have these motivational instructors, but they also made it more inclusive. And they included adaptive fitness. So you saw that their trainers tended to be more diverse as well. But some of the withdrawals were like in the 2019, before the pandemic, you know, Peloton was on a downturn because of their Christmas commercial where the husband was like, hey, I got you this bike so you could lose some weight. And that didn't really go over well with the target market. But then when COVID hit, that was actually the first time they made a profit. They decided to partner with HBO and Sex and the City, which is the AGI, I can't remember, and Just Like That, I think. And they didn't have any control over their product, because what ended up happening is Mr. Big died in the first episode on the Peloton. And there was this whole big thing of, oh my God, Peloton kills and blah, blah, blah. Peloton hadn't looked and hadn't taken ownership of their brand to say, we only want certain type of marketing. They didn't look at the script. Those are where you own your brand and make sure you have ownership of that brand from beginning towards the very end, because that partnership can tank you. It also happened on another show, I think Billions. Like a month later, somebody died on the Peloton. So it was a whole big thing. Also with Ashton Kutcher in his marathon training collab that he did, and he had Kim Kardashian on, and Kardashians can be very polarizing. So it's looking at who do you have on there. And it was like, well, she has lipo and different types of things, but she may still work out. But they just didn't see it like that. They said, you know, your whole vision at Peloton is that you are about having a group for everybody. And it doesn't, you don't have to look a certain way. It's just about a healthy lifestyle. And maybe you're including people that don't really reflect your core values and the mission that you have. So it's really being thoughtful about that. And then the next thing, the last one is the P, and being proactive with a PR crisis. So be prepared to handle dicey and uncomfortable situations and feedback. Create a crisis plan to help you quickly and effectively manage any sort of unanticipated backlash. So listen first, respond second is always what I have to say. Decide on what needs a public statement versus internal action. Not everything needs to be commented on. And then utilize that active humility and accountability. People want to see that you've heard them and that you're going to take action, and then respond with transparency. An example of this is Honey Pot. They are a plant-derived feminine hygiene care company, and their whole marketing thing was for women that wanted clean products for their feminine hygiene. And they had a very loyal fan base. And as their business grew, they went into Target. Well, when you have to mass produce products, that means you have to put some sort of preservative in them so that they have a shelf life. They didn't communicate that to their customers. And so when the customers saw it in Target, it was a huge issue, because they're like, oh, I see now these aren't free of these different types of preservatives that you have been doing all this time. And I immediately thought of Grace and Frankie. I don't know if you've watched that on Netflix, but when Frankie sold her feminine yam lube to say Grace, it was the same type of thing. She didn't want them to put the preservatives in there, but you can only keep these products for a certain lifetime if you're in a large store. So it's like, maybe you have two tracks where you can buy directly from your business for the preservative free, and then go in and do that. So it's always that type of thing. And then finally, looking at the brand wagon. So if you are going to be making a statement, make sure you're making that statement from an informed place, and that you don't just get on and you say, oh, okay, well, during 2020 BLM, and we have this black box and we stand for this, and currently it's Palestine and Israel. It's making sure you're thoughtful about who your clients are as well as yourself, and that what you say does not also alienate your base. You have to really be thoughtful about that and mean what you say. Stand by it, because you may get some backlash, but if you believe in what you're saying, you should be able to withstand that backlash. You don't want to be seen as being performative, and that's where that performative action is. You'll see Starbucks, where we BLM, and then 7 days later they were saying, no, we can't have these shirts on, blah, blah, blah. It was a huge thing to where they had to do all this training and all of that. So you just want to make sure that you have a plan in place. And then I just have some quick tips on acknowledge the controversy within 24 hours. Don't be defensive. Refrain from being dismissive. or of the complaint, because then people will be like, I can't take you seriously. You're not really part of the community. Use your active listening skills to understand why. You may not agree with it, but at least understand where they're coming from. Acknowledge the hurt and apologize. People want to hear that you hear what they're saying and that you've apologized, and make sure that apology is not for an absolution. You don't want to be like, oh, I want to be made clean of this. You want to say, I'm holding myself accountable and I'm sorry for this. And then just educate yourself on and consider how you avoid this in the future, and post follow-ups of where you're going, how are you getting better, and go from there. And then that is the Rise Up formula. So as a recap, reevaluate your identity, identify your ideal client demographics. Services and products should be designed inclusively. Execute your marketing effectively, understand it's a process, and have a proactive PR plan. So I know I went through quite a bit quite quickly, but I wanted to use a lot of the examples. So are there any questions or anything like that?
Oh my gosh, Nichole, this was amazing. Thank you so much. I had to step away for like 5 minutes to get my daughter off the bus, but this was so good. I've been looking at your website and I will probably reach out to you because we're looking for help kind of putting together our DEI strategy for our business. And so, like, how is this integrated into everything that we do? And so, yeah, I will definitely, I just connected with you on LinkedIn and I'll be reaching out because it's a big priority for us. But this was so helpful. Thank you so much.
Well, you're welcome. And if you're following me on LinkedIn, then I also, now that I'm getting back into working almost full time, so as I've come out of my illness, I do a lot of free things on LinkedIn. So I provide a lot of this information, and I'll be up late. I do have a checklist on this Rise Up method, and I will be updating that as well. But I do just try to make sure that there is a community to talk about these things in a really safe way, because there's so many questions. I feel like sometimes people don't want to ask them because they're like, well, I don't want to seem like I'm wrong or I say something wrong, but I say things wrong all the time. And I just say, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. However, I really want to learn. And and what I say, even about DEI work, and what I do is, I'm not the voice on everything. There are people that have expertise in different parts, just like with whatever we do with our businesses. And I don't look at them as competitors. I look at them as market partners, because somebody else may be a better fit. And I try to get people to think of that as well. When you're looking at your UDI and who your ideal client is, you don't want to work with everybody, but it's figuring out who that is. And if you can't work with them, how do you get them onto somebody else and pay it forward? There's that too. So I would love to work with you, Stephanie. I'm so glad we're connected. And, I hope that this was helpful.
Oh my gosh, Nichole, this was so helpful. And I know that we have a small group here today, but also this was recorded. And so there are so many people who I know are going to benefit from this work via the recording. And so it's wonderful that they have that too. Thank you so much. This was so
you.
much information. Like, this was so dense, full of amazing information, so helpful. And we just appreciate your time and your expertise and your effort and your great energy in this presentation. So thank you for showing up. Thank you, Stephanie, for
Thank you.
coming. And I will let you both go, but thank you so much. And it was great to see both of you. Have a wonderful rest of your
Yes.
week.
Thank
Thank you. Thanks, Nichole.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.